this point in my work, I have cut back on consulting, but still doing a few jobs here and there, including occasional teaching of systems thinking.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Fazil, can you go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Fazil Hayati. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. And Bill and I go back a long time. We were chatting just last night. I realized my first Deming-related conference was in 1989 at Ohio Quality and Productivity Forum. So, at any rate, I've enjoyed my being a Deming disciple all these years. I'm a semi-retired faculty, so I don't know what that means. I'm busier in retirement than I was when I was working, but there's a lot of fun things. It's really nice to see everybody and re-engage.
Okay. Dirk, can you go next?
Yes, I can. Hello, everybody. Dirk Van Putten. My title is Quality Manager at Monolithic Power Systems. We make analog semiconductors to manage power. I spend my days navigating a sea of red pens. And the ongoing thoughts, the ongoing discussions, and the better thinking about webinars were probably the single most transformational experience for me, either in education or work. So I'm an enormous fan of Bill Bellows. Yesterday was tremendously refreshing, and so thankful to be here.
Okay, thanks, Dirk. Louis, can you go next?
Yes, I'm Louis Padullo. I'm in Philadelphia. I'm a retired many times over. I remember asking my wife's dad when he was retired, what does he do all day? And he said, I don't know, but it takes all day to do it. So I'm an old fan of both Deming and Ackoff. And I guess I'm one of your red beads.
Okay.
You don't look red.
You don't look red, yeah. Catherine, can you go next?
I don't have much to say.
Are you? I'm not hearing you.
Catherine, you're muted.
Yeah, she's too shy. She asked me to say she's nice, but actually, she was a big fan of Deming's also. She went to several of the seminars with me and also some of the Ackoff things. But she's an applied mathematician, Tau Beta Pi from Georgia Tech, and well retired also.
Okay. Jim, can you go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Jim Lawton. I currently am based in Doha, Qatar, Middle East. I'm a physician by training, and I look after the quality patient safety risk management for the National Ambulance Service. And I think I'm a relative newbie, having met Bill only in 2019, when he did an amazing workshop, Deming in the 21st Century, which was actually at the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, who introduced me to Deming many years ago, although they've probably lost touch with a lot of what Deming was teaching, and I'm just here to learn and share what I can.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, you're next.
Hi, Mike Ethel. I actually live in Lodi, Wisconsin. I'm 20 minutes north of Madison.
Oh, yeah.
So we're neighbors. It was interesting. I had my first chance to go to one of the workshops in Santa Clarita this last year. We had a chance to meet Bill and a lot of other fantastic folks. I jumped out of the corporate world as a W-2 guy in 2022, and I've been doing consulting, helping small businesses improve their operating systems using Deming principles, lean, and constraints theory.
Okay. All we have left is Dennis's AI. I'm not sure if that one will. I guess not.
I guess not.
I guess not. That just leaves me and Bill. I guess I'll go first. My name is Chuck Boone. I'm in Camarillo, California, which is maybe 40 miles or so south and west of where Bill is. And I've been affiliated with N2N since 2010. And it's helped me in my work. I'm currently between positions because we sold my company, and it was just I'm having a little bit of a challenge getting my next gig, but other than that, it's I too feel refreshed by this. It reinvigorates me and keeps my perspective optimistic. And then Bill, I guess that just leaves you.
All right. So Bill Bellows, I live in Santa Clarita, California, which is the southern end is about 40 miles due north of Los Angeles International Airport. So we're in the valley just north of the San Fernando Valley. I worked at Rocketdyne in Los Angeles for 26 years and then was deputy director of the Deming Institute for 2 years and 8 months. Retired from there mid 2019. And then since then, I've been doing online courses for Southern Utah University and Cal State Northridge, and then consulting with colleagues in Europe, and then in the States, I consult for Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' space company, and there I have the great pleasure of working with a number of 35-year-old colleagues from Rocketdyne, with whom we did some really amazing things, including developing snap fit hardware in the rocket engines we designed and delivered. So, and Dirk mentioned the ongoing discussions, which was a Rocketdyne activity that started in around 2000. And for 17 years, every single month, there were 4 one-hour sessions, typically the last Thursday and Friday of the month from 12 to 1 and 1 to 2 on both days. And an announcement would go out first to people within Rocketdyne, then Rocketdyne was owned by Boeing, so within Boeing, then we just opened it up to whoever wanted to join. And at one point in time, the mailing list with 5,000 people around the world, and they would call in, register, call in. Somebody asked me once, is it the same call all 4 hours? I said, only if people don't listen. But the nature of the call was a conversation with the person who wrote the article that we would all read in advance. We got to the point after several years of running where Russ Akoff was the every January thought leader 4 or 5 years in a row. So I would fly to Philadelphia to be with him in his office, and it was a wonderful experience. But every year, 17 years, every month, a 1 hour call, which is over 800 calls, of which for the last 10 years, they're all recorded and they're all on a hard drive someplace. And so that was a lot of fun. All right. So what I want to do is pick up where we left off yesterday. I have posted yesterday's recording on YouTube. You can find it under the InThinking Network page. And if you have trouble finding it, just let me know, and I'll. All right. So this is September 17th, part 2. And so we're in the Beyond the Red Beads territory, but I want to one, for some overlap, reminder, Dr. Deming's experiment with willing workers that he would take from the audience. Typically 6 people would come up, pour the beads from one container into the other, put this paddle in, move it around, put it in at a very precise angle, remove it very precisely, and count the number of red beads, which are the defects. What the customer wants are white beads. And so the process is to mix the materials. The production is to put the paddle in and remove it. That's the process of creating the product. Then there'd be a subsequent inspection, and then the recording of the results. And what we didn't do yesterday, I went past, was to show you Dr. Deming doing this. And there's one video we didn't use, which you can find on the Deming Institute YouTube channel. It's about 15 minutes long, Dr. Deming going through. But within the last year, I found a short video posted by Bill Schirkenbach, very likely during a seminar for GM. And this is, I want to show this next. It's just a few minutes long. And you're getting this stage view of Dr. Deming providing an explanation of the process. So here we go.
You'll grasp the larger vessel on the broad side and pour at a distance of 12 centimeters. You'll simply pour. You'll observe no gymnastics. I did not get around like this. I simply poured like that. This is to mix the material. You'll then return your beads from the smaller vessel into the large one at a distance of 12 centimeters, merely pour. You'll then use the paddle and do your day's work. We have work standards here, 50 per day. We do everything wrong except one thing. Our inspectors will be independent. Everything else is wrong. We have work standards, 50 per day. And we have a goal. Only one red bead in a workload. 0 or 1, that's our goal. Do you understand? Not more than one red bead. You'll dip the paddle into the material. The paddle has 50 depressions. And do you know why there are 50 depressions in the paddle? Are you all clear on the reason why? I'll explain it to you. There are 5 holes in one direction and 10 in the other. That makes 50. Are you clear? You think you understand it? You understand it. You'll take the paddle, use this paddle, use the handle, grasp it on the broad side with 2 fingers, dip it into the material, push down the bottom, gentle agitation, do not push, do not shake, do not shove. Simply raise it, holding it by your 2 fingers. Simply raise it, angle 15 degrees, axis horizontal, excess beads roll off. You have 50 beads. 50 is our work standard. Not 49, not 51, 50 exactly. I purposely made some red beads so you may see what they look like. You'll carry your work to inspector number 1. You'll count the number of red beads. No. Count the number of red beads. Put down the count. In silence. Are you sure of the count? You're responsible for the count. Number 2 will count put it down in silence. Chief Inspector will compare the two counts. If there's a discrepancy, there may be a mistake. If they agree, there may be a mistake. Chief Inspector is responsible for the count. He'll then announce, Chief Inspector will announce in a loud voice the count. Use the microphone back of you. Announce.
There are 10.
No, announce the count.
50 beads.
No, 10 red beads. 10 is a count.
I said 10 red beads.
Oh, 10?
Yes.
You sure it's a 10?
Yes.
All right. The count is 10, and you announce the count. 10 red beads.
10 red beads.
And the word dismiss.
Dismissed.
Whereupon the worker will return his work. Return his beads to the incoming supply.
All right.
You'll grasp.
And so at the In2 Forum in June, Chuck and I were responsible for a 3-hour session, which included everything you're seeing so far, watching both videos, and at this point of time, what we had planned to do live was get willing workers from the audience, inspectors from the audience, and spend perhaps a half hour to 40 minutes doing the demonstration, given this explanation from Dr. Deming, so people get a chance to play with the red beads. So that's what's behind this slide. And then following that, we would have watched, and we will watch here, Dr. Deming providing lessons from the red beads. And this is also a video which you can find on the Deming Institute YouTube channel.
When I was a willing worker in the red beads, I learned more than statistical theory. I knew that the system would not allow me to meet the goal, but I still felt that I could. I wanted to. I tried so hard. I felt the responsibility. I felt that others were dependent on me. My logic and emotions conflicted. I was frustrated. Logic said there was no way that I could succeed. Emotions said I must try.
That's part of a letter to Dr. W. Edwards Deming from Anne, a willing worker in one of his red bead experiments. Willing workers in these experiments often say that they knew it was a game and quickly realized they couldn't win, but they tried anyway. They wound up frustrated by a system that would not let them do their work, in which they were powerless to change. But the red beads is only a game. The question then becomes, what happens to the men and women whose paychecks and futures depend on their performance in businesses and industries, most of which are run exactly like the red bead experiment?
After it was over, I thought about my own work situation. How often are people in a situation that they cannot govern, but wished to do their best? And people do their best. And after a while, what happens to their drive, their care, their desire? For some, they become burned out, tuned out. Fortunately, there are many that only need the opportunity and methods to contribute.
The willing workers illustrate two lessons. First, workers will try to do their jobs even when they know they cannot. And second, doing your best doesn't matter unless you know what to do, why you are doing it, and how to do it.
These control limits tell you the variation of the system. If we have a system, first of all, you heard the foreman's procedures, his instructions. pour at a distance of 8 centimeters into the smaller vessel from the corner. They were rigid. Second, we have the data, the figures, either in the form of the table or the chart. There are the figures. We have the control in it. I would conclude we have a pretty good stable system. The willing workers put forth their best efforts under rigid conditions. They conformed to procedures, but there was wide variation in results from one worker to another. Same worker from day to day might jump all the way from the best worker down to the worst one next day. The variation came from the system. The system is the responsibility of management. People work within the system. Management is responsible for the system.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is a slide we looked at yesterday, again, as part of a transition from yesterday to today. Why do you need to make zero defect manufacturing part of your corporate culture? And zero defect manufacturing being striving for zero red beads, all white beads, as if that is the goal. That is the goal. And again, we looked at this yesterday. And I use these slides in my university courses to remind the attendees that striving for zero red beads, striving for zero defects, defining quality in terms of things being good versus bad is alive and well. There's like no other way of managing an organization than good parts and bad parts, good things and bad things, which is a reminder of looking at things in isolation, is one of the points Fazal Hayati made yesterday. When you assign a grade to a student in a classroom or in a work setting, assign performance ratings to an individual, you are separating that individual from the system and saying, you are good or you are bad, separate from the greater system in which they work. Okay. And again, the only reason I reference Phil Crosby is that Phil Crosby in the early 60s shifted the thinking from delivering defective red beads, delivering red beads to a customer is acceptable, almost inevitable, to the standard ought to be zero. Zero. So Crosby did not create, I mean, quality is defined as conformance requirements. He didn't create that mindset. That mindset is 200 years old. What he did was popularize strive for zero. Like Dr. Deming in the video allowed one red bead. Phil Crosby would say the standard ought to be zero. When I taught at Northwestern's Kellogg Business School for 4 years in a row back in the late 90s, it was a 5-week class in quality management as part of a master's degree effort, a joint program between Northwestern's Business School and Northwestern's Engineering School. And it was a program designed to compete with something MIT was doing. And the attendees were people that worked in industry for 4 or 5 years, come back to go full time. I got exposed to the program by 2 colleagues from Rocketdyne that went back to get their Masters of Management Manufacturing degree. And they introduced me to people running the program, liked what we were doing at Rocketdyne, and I was offered the opportunity to teach there for 4 years. And so I got a chance to present these types of ideas for 4 years in a row to anywhere between 40 and 50 um, you know, people that had worldly experience. They had worked for Coca-Cola, they worked for Intel, they worked for GM, and it was exciting to expose Deming's ideas to them and be reminded that everything they knew is exactly what we're seeing, conformance to requirements. This is so for me, part of the excitement was that all they knew is what we're talking about, is alive and well. I would have the students keep a journal day by day throughout the semester of not what they were learning, but how what they're learning is changing their worldview. And at the end of the course, each team, each individual was assigned to a team of 4 or 5, and each team had a half hour where each individual went up and shared from their journal whatever they wanted to share from their journal with the rest of the attendees. And a number of them would comment on how what I was presenting conflicted with what they were learning in other courses. Imagine that. Imagine that. But it was cool. It was really cool. It was a really fun bunch. One woman, and I reached out to her a couple of years ago. I still want to go back to it. Because some of their reflections were, I mean, they were all very sincere, very heartfelt. One of them shared a letter that a wife, a woman, shared with Dr. Deming, and it's in the New Economics. And the woman wrote that Dr. Deming, before attending your seminar, my husband and I were in a win-lose relationship. Upon attending your seminar, I became more aware of how win-lose that was. And this is a paraphrase. And she said, you know, I went back determined to patch it up, because who wants to be married to a loser? So Melody, this one student, shared that, her, you know, paraphrasing that article. And what the reason it struck her so closely is that she was getting married that summer. So she read the article as a wife to be. And I thought, wow, how cool is that she saw the letter and she's sharing that. But then she went on to say that you know, they were getting married that summer, and I believe she was from, you know, somewhere in Michigan, let's say Ann Arbor, and her fiance was from someplace, I think in Ohio. And so the wedding, you know, by protocol would be in Ann Arbor. This is her explanation. Of course, the wedding's going to be in, you know, my hometown. But then she says, but that would make my fiance's family losers because they have to drive to us. So she says, so we have decided, in the spirit of what I learned from Dr. Deming in this course, to hold the wedding on campus at in Chicago, so both families get to drive. And I thought, wow. So I am anxious to reach out to her and find out, how did that all go? That was, you know, 30 some years ago. All right. And I shared this with you yesterday. When I worked for the Deming Institute, and several times a year, I would pair up with Kelly Allen, and Kelly and I would present a 2.5 day program, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And Kelly would do the red bead experiment piece. He would plot the data on a control chart, and then I would pick up from that. And imagine there's 100 people in the room. So I get up and I say, we learned from Kelly and Dr. Deming that the red beads are caused by the system, not the individuals. And I said, Dr. Deming in point 5 of the 14 points talks about continual improvement. And I said, is your interpretation of what Dr. Deming is talking about is that every department within the organization strives for 0 red beads? Is that what you're hearing? And if that is what you're hearing, if every department achieves 0 red beads, are we done with improvement? Or could we do more? And if we could do more to improve, what would better mean? Which is, again, where I left off yesterday. So imagine what changes would you be expected within your organizations if we could achieve this goal of 100% white beads. And this is what when I said to the audience is, so is what Dr. Deming's saying, strive for 100% white beads everywhere. And if we achieve that, could we continue to improve, or are we done? And time and again, people would say we can continue to improve. And I'd say, what does improvement mean? And they would say, we can do it faster. We can do it cheaper. And I said, okay, fine. But what about quality? Can the quality of the beads be improved? And they would say yes. And I'd say, what does that mean? They say, well, we can do it faster and cheaper. And I'd say, I know you can do it faster and cheaper, but I'm going to push you on the better. What does better mean? And again, the response was, yes, we can make them better, but with no explanation of what better means. And I've seen that multiple times. And so it was fascinating to see that. And so I want to go to the next step. And this is when I called a couple of years ago the acceptability question of quality management. Has a requirement for a characteristic, a component, a system been met? And there's two answers to that question, yes or no. You could look at something that has 50 requirements, and the acceptability question is saying if all 50 requirements are met, then that is acceptable, that is good. All right, then we're done. Missing from this perspective is what I call the variation question. How many ways are there to meet one specific requirement? And at once upon a time, I would say there's an infinite number of ways to meet a given set of requirements if you allow for lots of decimal places. And then somebody called me on it and said, infinite? And I said, fine, 364. So that's the variation question. What Crosby's talking about, and there's nothing wrong with this, but what he's talking about is managing actions, saying this is good, right? And if you look at the work of Russ Akoff, you can, Russ talks about actions, looking at things in isolation, interactions. I can't order the wine without knowing the meal. I can't arrange the music for the wedding without knowing the guest list. That I can't do my task without finding out how Dirk is doing his task. So an understanding that the efforts are connected. And the proposal I make in my work with clients and students is there's nothing wrong with managing actions, but let it be a choice that we've decided in this situation that it's not worth the trouble of managing it as a system, which means interactions. In this situation, we're saying we don't think it's worth the extra effort, so let's just go with managing actions. But at least it's a choice. And what I find in organizations, it's not a choice. It's not a choice to be proactive or reactive. These are defaults that don't require, there's no thought involved. And part of what we had at Rocketdyne with colleagues such as Tim Higgins, Joe Onstock, Rudy Hernandez was, if we become aware of our thinking, then we can try to make things a choice. Choose managing interactions or choose managing actions. Okay. So again, this goes back to Crosby. These are the absolutes of what I would call part quality, looking at things in isolation. Dr. Deming, by comparison, in the New Economics, says a product or service possesses quality if it helps somebody and enjoys a good and sustainable market. Part of what I like about this is, as I mentioned yesterday, here he's defining quality, not in terms of when it leaves my hands, it's good, but it's looking at someone downstream, perhaps Fossil, and saying, how's it working for you? Is it helping you? the only piece of clarity I would add is it's not that it helps or it doesn't, but how well does it help? And when you shift from, helps is like it does or it doesn't, it's good or it's bad. If we shift this to how well does it help, well, that could be a scale from 0 to infinity, which allows for improvement. So that would have been my suggestion to Dr. Deming if I was asked. So,
Hey, Bill,
yes.
this is Dirk.
Hey, Dirk.
Quick comment, and I put it in the chat. The how well is, in my opinion, continuum thinking.
Correct.
And the idea of good is a product, good or bad, one or the other is categorical thinking. And that is one aha moment I had thanks to you. And I just want to share, I really appreciated those. The thinking about thinking, are we using categorical or continuum thinking? And is that an appropriate way of approaching the idea, the problem, the issue, whatever it is? So thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Putting things in categories, whether it's category good, category bad, or category of where you graduated from college, category of, what state you're from, what religion you practice. Putting people in categories is category thinking. What's missing from that is that everything in a given category is not the same. It's just a simple model to say, I'm from California, but are all Californians the same? No. But yeah, and so all things that are good the same? No. But when it comes to managing actions, the implication is that all Californians are the same, all parts that are good are the same, that there is no variation. And that's a pretty dominant model in organizations. Get me another engineer, get me another doctor, get me another bearing package. They're all the same because they all meet the requirements. So managing interactions is looking at things, which gets us into the territory of looking at how things connect and how well they connect. All right, so this is a story that many of you have heard, but maybe not all of you. So when our kids were in high school, they were on the high school swim team. And I mentioned yesterday, Allison is now the coach of the high school swim team where she is. And so her and Wilson were speed monsters. They did their favorite event was a 50-yard freestyle. So anyway, at the beginning of each season, the coach would get all the parents together with all the kids, and we'd go have a bowl-a-thon on a Saturday afternoon. So one of the first times we did this, that's my wife's bowling ball and bowling shoes in this bag. So the very first time we did this, came home, walked down the hallway, and right at the entrance to the doorway to the master bedroom is my wife's bowling bag. So I turned to her and said, "Why is it here?" And her immediate response was, "I asked Wilson to put it, ask Wilson. Wilson left it there." So Wilson would have been about 13 or 14 at the time. So I go to Wilson. I said, "Wilson, why is the bowling back here?" And he said, "Mom said put it in the bedroom." So technically, does that meet requirements?
Yeah.
And so this is what I explained to the senior most NASA person responsible for quality. I was invited to see him, encouraged to see him by the then VP of quality at Rocketdyne. He wanted me to go to NASA headquarters and explain to him, how we've achieved 100% snap fit, how we're, what does that mean? So I went out to meet with him, but in advance of meeting with him, I called him up a week in advance, wanted to make sure he knew I was coming, and he said he knew I was coming. And he says, "What are we going to talk about?" And I said, "I want to challenge the theory of interchangeable parts." And he said, well, what does that mean? So I said something like, what letter grade does NASA expect for everything you buy from all of your contractors? What's the letter grade requirement called out in your contract? If there is a letter grade, what letter grade do you expect? And he says the letter grade requirement is A+. I said, it's not A+. He said, what's the requirement? I said, D- is the requirement. D- or better. And there's this pause. I said, it's a pass-fail system. In a pass-fail system, A, B, C, and even D- are passing grades. They're not an F, which is a failing grade. So I said, what I want to share with you are what are the implications of managing with a model that treats everything good as equally good. And what I want to share with you is how we've become smarter than that and how we're managing variation in things that are good to achieve remarkable integration, leading to ease of assembly and superior performance. So I said, so is an A+ the same as a D-? He said, no. I said, that's what I want to share with you. What does that mean? So I went out and met with them. And a month or so later, I asked the VP of quality, I said, so did you ever hear back from the guy I met with? He says, yeah. He says he's not quite sure that it makes a difference. It can be hard for people to adjust to that. So that's a white bead. Those are all white beads. If they're in the hallway, those are red beads.
Bill, that's would also be a good example Dr. Deming would use to on operational definitions. What is cold? What is hot? What is on time? What's in the bedroom? So
Somehow we lost Bill.
there he is.
We lost you there for a second.
Oh, okay. So I have to share again, right?
You don't have to, yes, if you want to, if you got some video to share, yeah, or.
Okay. So the recording is still happening, right, Chuck?
It appears to be.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Did you hear what I just said about there's variation in the diameter and weight of the beads? Is that, I'm not sure.
No, that was while you were gone.
Okay. All right. So the punchline I want to get to is instead of believing using category thinking that white beads are white beads, they're all the same. If you understand variation, you understand that twins are not identical. No two snowflakes are the same. And what that leads to is the white beads are not identical. They have the potential to have variation in diameter, variation in weight, variation in size, surface roughness, whatever characteristic you want to look at. There's actually variation in those. So instead of looking at them, they're all within the requirements, so they're all the same. What we can look at is there could be a control chart for the size, for the diameter, for the weight, with the realization that these things are actually different. And so when I speak about the red bead experiment, I want to get into what Dr. Deming spoke about, which is there's white beads and the red beads are caused by the system, not the workers taken separately. But then I like to go the next step and get into content I first discovered in meeting Dr. Junichi Taguchi in the 86, 87 timeframe, which is there's variation in things that are good. And this is an appreciation we have at home because the variation in things that are good only shows up when you put things together. So if you've got variation in all these components that are all good, well, it's not until you put the things together and try to integrate them that those differences appear. So why do we sort between the oranges in a supermarket? Because one's juicier than another, right? Why do we sort between the parking spots? Because one's got more shade than another. You know, why do we choose one professor over another for Calculus 1? Because the proposal is that because there's a better fit that I have with this professor than that professor. So, you know, how often do we sort between things that are good? All the time. And the example I would use in a class, and I did this for many years at Rocketdyne, was the simple act of sorting through the oranges that are good to say, I want this orange as managing things that are good. And one attendee one year said, he said, well, I don't sort between things that are good. I said, well, then how do you buy oranges? He said, I buy the oranges by the bag. I said, do you sort between the bags? He said, nope. He crossed his arms and says, I don't sort. So I looked at his left hand and I said, I noticed on your left hand a wedding ring. He said, yes. I said, did you sort? Yes, he did. Sorting amongst things that meet requirements. How often do we use that thinking? All the time. And so what I want to share with you now is how that thinking was used 30 years ago in the design, development, and production of the RS-68 engine. And I'll give you some information here.
Bill,
Yes.
switch to presentation mode. We're looking at all the slides.
Okay. Let's see here. Swap displays.
There you go.
Okay, good. All right. So the R68 engine is a $500 million development effort. When Rocketdyne was owned by Boeing, Boeing had that money. Rockwell, that was Rocketdyne's former parent back in the up until 96, did not have that kind of money. Boeing did. There was a projection of a lot of money to be made in commercial space. So Boeing put a lot of money into this. I was working with many people that were involved in the design of this engine, and many of them took what I'm sharing with you very seriously. Not all of them, but enough of them took it seriously to lead to things like this. So the R68 engine, roughly 18 feet tall, it went into production in the 97, 98 timeframe. All those engines have been launched. It was I say an order of magnitude, maybe a 30-year, 25 to 30 years of production, of just roughly. And so the primary use of that engine was on each of these black segments referred to as a common core. So for launching the Air Force's heaviest satellites, the Delta IV rocket, that's where it became the workhorse. If it's a smaller satellite, then you don't see 3 segments, you only see 1. And but most often when the Delta IV was launched, it was 3 common booster cores, each with its own R68 engine. So the combustion chamber is ahead of the nozzle, and the combustion chamber is where the fuel, hydrogen, and the oxygen come together. And the design that the designer had in mind, the designer is Felix Delgado. What Felix had in mind, and roughly, I can't give you the exact details, but think of the injector plate as being 30 inches in diameter and having all the way around the perimeter, all the way around, concentric circles, 628 holes. So there's an outer ring, a next ring, a next ring. And these holes are roughly maybe 3/10 of an inch in diameter. And so the holes are machined in the injector plate. The injector plate is roughly $250,000. It's far more complicated than a flat plate, but I can only talk about a flat plate. And if I look at a cross section, you see all these holes. And what Felix had in mind is that an injector, which has a tube within a tube, so it's referred to as a coaxial injector, and I believe through the center is hydrogen, through the annulus would be oxygen. Maybe I've got that backwards. But this coaxial injector is inserted in each of these holes. Well, then how is it joined to the plate? Well, it's joined through a process called brazing. And one of my Rocketdyne colleagues years ago said she explains brazing is kind of the cheese joining two pieces of bread together. And so braised foil, very thin foil, maybe several mils thick, is inserted between the injector and the plate. And then when you spend about $15,000 and put this into a braise furnace at elevated temperatures for a couple hours, then that braise, think of the cheese, melts and sticks out at the top and sticks out in the bottom. And as a result, you seal the top, what's going on in the top of the plate from the bottom of the plate, because you don't want the oxygen and the hydrogen to come together until you're down on the bottom of the plate, not the top of the plate. If it happens in the top of the plate, it's a bad day. So Felix and Mike Malinzak, the manufacturing engineer, had in mind a design like this. We're looking at a volume on the order of 1 a week. So this is very high volume for Rocketdyne at that time, where we would typically make one space shuttle main engine a year over multiple years, maybe 2 a year. There were roughly 18 space shuttle main engines made. So 1 a week is very heavy volume. And so they had a design like this in mind. And this is, and it's also what Felix and Mike felt was the cheapest way to join these. The problem was, prior to 1996, if you were to do a brazing operation like this, where you've got 628 holes, which means you've got 2 fillets per, which is 1,256. The problem was, we did not know how to get every single fillet in one cycle, which means what we would have to do is spend $15,000, braise it once, check to see which fillets were not achieved the first time and braise it again, another $15,000. Maybe do it 3 times, because at that time, the best we could ever achieve was 85% of the fillets in one cycle, worst case 50. So when they presented this solution, it was rejected because it'd be too slow and too expensive on the brazing. Yet other processes to join these together would be more expensive than just the 15,000. And Mike and Felix felt very strongly that they had an understanding of why we could never braise it in one cycle, because our traditional way of looking at this was to look at the tubes in isolation and the holes in isolation and say, those are good tubes, those are good holes. What they started to focus on is the relationship between them. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Traditionally, prior to 1996, when a machinist machines a hole, what the machinist would do is make the hole as small as possible, minimum effort. What the people working on the outer diameter of the tube, and that's a grinding operation, so they look at the tube, it starts off a little large, and they have to make it small enough to fit the requirement. And so what do? Their grinding operation leaves the outer diameter on the high side, the hole is on the low side. And this is classic manufacturing, where people are looking at a set of requirements and saying, low side, high side, which is easiest for me? What they're not focusing on is how these two come together. So the simple question here is, if you have the two people making the tube outer diameter to the high side, and from the grinding people, and then the hole people making the hole as small as possible, the question becomes, which of them is responsible for the clearance? And the answer is neither of them owns the clearance. They contribute to the clearance, but the clearance is not their focus. What Mike and Felix figured out is that the reason we could never braze in one cycle is that we never focused on the clearance. So experiments were run to find out what is the ideal clearance. What is the ideal gap between them? So again, that's not looking at each one in isolation. That is saying, what should the spacing be between the distributions? So they ran experiments, found out the ideal spacing. They then did experiments on the hole machining, looking at the achievement of different distributions based on which supplier you buy the new drill from, how long you use the drill. They looked at different ways of grinding the outer diameter. But instead of just taking the distributions and looking at the max of one, the min of the other, what they focused on was what's the ideal spacing between them. Which is a little extra effort, but with that effort, every single unit ever produced over a, let's say, 20 to 25-year time frame, brazed in one cycle. If Felix was with us, Felix sadly passed away in the spring of this year. Anytime I said every unit brazed in one cycle, Felix would say, except for one, Bill, where we used the wrong braze foil. But not only was this result achieved in-house on the first two units, but eventually, I'm not sure, at some point of time, Rocketdyne management decided we did not want to be in the business of bringing this all together. So we went to a supplier in Minneapolis that machined the $250,000 manifold, went to another supplier down there at Disneyland, and they fabricated the injectors. And people from Rocketdyne went to the injector people, showed them how to mind the gap. They then took on the responsibility of making the coaxial injectors, receiving the plate from Minneapolis, putting the brace foil in, sending it down the road to the brace house. So at some point in time, it went from an inside operation to an outside, but with coaching, with people from Rocketdyne that understood the difference between minding parts and minding gaps, we trained the supplier, and they maintained 100% braze quality, 100% of the fillets for the remainder of the program. And so this is over the course of 20 some years, every unit brazed in one cycle, again, with the exception of one. And I explained this last week. I said, think about what does it take to maintain that focus for all those years? Well, somehow the explanation had to be pretty damn good. But economically, what Rocketdyne did with the tube vendor when the contract was written was they would, Rocketdyne would buy 5 units at a time, maybe at 5 per year. For some reason, it was a 5-unit contract. But very specifically, the contract was written was, we're buying 5 and we're only paying for 5. So if you scrap one, then you pay for the extra unit. So there was a financial incentive that we're showing you how to achieve this, and we're only paying for 5. You make 6 or 7, you pay for them yourself. And so I use that as an example of there was the wherewithal to do it internally, to transfer it to a supplier, and they maintained this focus for all those years. And so within Rocketdyne, what we started talking about was in the past, we would mine the parts, and for this hardware, we minded the gap as a choice. And part of the role of this languaging, minding the gap being from the London Underground, minding the part being, our alternative, the strategy was to educate senior management within Rocketdyne that we have a choice between minding the part, which is the traditional way, or if it's worth the trouble, we could mind the gap. But the challenge, the strategy in using this languaging was to create broad awareness of the difference between them and let it be a choice as opposed to a default. So what does that mean? It means, Rocketdyne could have received a contract from NASA, on some hardware, and people working on it could say, "Oh, we're going to go mine the part," and somebody may or mine the gap, and somebody could say, "Well, we're only making one of them. Maybe it's not worth the effort." But the big deal was our strategy was to make it a choice. All right. So, wait, please tell us some closing thoughts there. Which of Dr. Deming's theorems came first? Turns out he had two of them. I've got a bit of a trivia contest. Anyone want to take a shot at this? Which of Dr. Deming's theorems is first and a second? Which did he come up with first?
The second one.
Yeah, Chuck, he came up with his second theorem first, and he would pronounce it as Deming's second theorem, which was, we're being ruined by best efforts, not guided with profound knowledge. And what I'm told is people would say, "Well, Dr. Deming, what's your first theorem?" And his response was something like, "Well, I haven't come up with it yet." But he came up with the second one first, and then sometime thereafter, the first theorem. The first theorem was, "No one gives a hoot about profit. I see no evidence of it," which is a pretty biting comment. I see no evidence of it.
Yeah, we lost you there for a second, Bill. Or I did anyway.
Oh, okay. Dr. Deming's first theorem, and I say very sarcastically, was, "No one gives a hoot about profit. I see no evidence of it." This comes from chapter 4 of the New Economics. The aim of this chapter, the aim of this presentation, I would say, is the prevailing system of management must undergo transformation. This is coming from Dr. Deming. A system cannot understand itself. The transformation requires a view from the outside. The aim of this chapter is to provide an outside view, a lens that he called the system of profound knowledge. The system of profound knowledge provides a lens, to use that metaphor of seeing the world differently, provides a map of theory by which to understand the organizations that we work in. And so I saw him talking about this in 1990, but it took a while for it to sink in as to what he was talking about. Also from chapter 4, once the individual understands the system of profound knowledge, he will apply its principles in every kind of relationship with others. He will apply the basis for judging his own decisions and for transformation of the organizations that he belongs to. The layout of profound knowledge appears in 4 parts, he said: appreciation for a system, knowledge about variation, theory of knowledge, which I would explain as, how do we know that what we know is so? And then psychology, all that people stuff. And then close with imagine the possibilities and the world which could be created, working together, investing together, designing together, building together, learning, thinking, and leading together. And this is what we're trying to do for 20 plus years at Rocketdyne, as we became aware of what we thought Dr. Deming was talking about, and then integrated into that things we were learning firsthand from Russ Akoff, things we were learning firsthand from Junichi Taguchi. And that's the end of the slides. So just open it up here for for our remaining time. Actually, we're a little past the hour. Right?
We're a little over.
Okay. I thought we were going to be done within the hour. I didn't lost track there. All right. So any questions, comments, observations?
My observation, Bill, is, and I mentioned this in Santa Clarita, when you hear yourself and others talk about, what you did with what Deming taught, this in the last 2 days has been I don't even know what to say, a graduate level class on using Deming's theories going forward. And I can't thank you enough. This has been fantastic.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much. No, it's yeah, no, I always say this. I could not be prouder of what we tried to do at Rocketdyne and did. And prouder of the people that bought into this. Thank you, Mike. And great to meet you last summer, and thanks for being with us. Anyone else?
Yeah, Bill, I just want to say thank you because I've missed this. And, I have nothing to do with the world of management or engineering, but as a philosophy major, I just love hearing how philosophy actually makes a concrete difference in the real world. It is so exciting. And how it can make a difference in the world of people. So thanks.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Ann.
Great it's good to see you again.
Yeah.
Can I just add, just expand on what Ann just said? I'm reminded that how much Dr. Deming and Dr. Schwartz, they were the products of pragmatism in early 1900s, how much they relied on philosophy as the basis of their thinking.
Yeah, what it reminds me of is there's in the early 50s time frame, there was an article in I think Detroit Free Press, was a Detroit newspaper, and the article was about a big fight going on at I forget the name of the universities. The fight was between Russ Akoff, who was a philosophy professor, and the chairman of the philosophy department. Louis, are you aware of that fight?
You say I'm not, but it sounds very juicy. I'd like to know more about it.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, so here it is in a public paper, an article about a big fight between this new professor, Russell Akoff, and the department chairman. And the fight was over. The university didn't renew his contract. And the students were upset because they loved Russ. And when Russ was interviewed and asked about it, his comment was that he viewed his thoughts on philosophy were is it something we can do something with? Is it more than a set of ideas? And his claim was that the department chairman viewed philosophy as ideas, and Russ's attitude was, can you use it to bake bread? But what's interesting, Louis, is someone, and you would have spent far more time than Russ, but when you look at this article and Russ's comments, these are comments from a very young Russ Akoff, and I thought even then he was, so obstinate in viewing philosophy and asking, is it something we can do something with, or is it just a set of ideas?
Bill, I think that was his first job. Was it Wright State University?
I believe so.
I think that's where it was. There is a picture of him. He was very young.
Yeah, and I think Johnny Portnard, somebody like Johnny, is one of his former PhD students, shared with me the article. And I say this, for those who are interested, send me an email and I'll find the article. I've got it. I took the article, created a Word version which is readable, but I also have in this PDF file a screenshot of the original article where you see a very grainy picture of Russ. And but yeah, can we do something with it? Thank you, Ann.
But are there any ideas that don't influence your view of what you can do? I think they all do in some way. Even if you think they don't, that means you think that you can't accomplish anything.
No, I had a colleague at Rocketdyne once said to me, he says, Bill, you used to be an engineer and now you're just a philosopher. And I thought, we are all philosophers. It's just like...
Yeah, thank you.
All right, anyone else?
Yeah, there's I think I'm blanking on his name, but he started the organization called Common Cause. And he used to say, in a society that doesn't value philosophers and plumbers the same value, is going to find out that neither their faucets nor their ideas hold water.
Oh, yeah.
What's the guy's name who founded Common Cause?
I'm
Anybody
looking at
remember?
John Gardner,
Thank
John
you.
W. Gardner.
Gardner, yeah.
Hmm.
He also said that an educated person, the mark of an educated person is that you can entertain someone else and entertain an idea. You should be entertaining.
That's good.
Thank you for this, Bill. I need to move on, and I look forward to being with you all next month.
Yeah.
Hey,
Thanks,
Bill?
everyone. There'll be an
Speaking of,
announcement. There'll
Bill?
be an announcement. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Bill. I just wondered, in case it's important to everybody else before they log off, the review of the new economics is starting next Tuesday, correct?
Yes.
As an advertisement?
Yes.
We have starting next Tuesday, every Tuesday, I believe 3 p.m. Pacific time, something like that, is the review of the new economics. So for those of us that can't get enough of Bill Bellows and thinking about thinking and improving our lives, next Tuesday is the next opportunity, I believe.
Yeah, what I'll do is I have all your names, I have all your email addresses. The announcement that came from the In2 InThinking Network a few weeks ago, and that announced this session as the first monthly session. Next month, the third Tuesday, Mike Beck will be presenting. It also announced, as you shared and thanked Dirk, that Tim Higgins will be leading the next New Economic Study session on Tuesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. California time. All those recordings will be put on our website, or on our YouTube channel if you don't catch them all. And the other thing we announced is that the In2 Forum for 2026, it will be July 17th, 18th, and 19th here in Santa Clarita. And also the other thing we announced is sessions like this and yesterday are our new online presenter, online attendees. The In2 InThinking Network Forum, beginning in 26, will be for attendees live only and presenters live only. Now, it'll be recorded and it will be posted, but we're not going to do what we did last year, which is try to have online attendees and live attendees. It just became overwhelming for us to try to pull that off. So again, so thanks everyone. I will post this. I have all your email addresses, so I'll send you the article from the article about Russ Akoff. I'm sure you will enjoy it. And thanks for being here for the inaugural the inaugural In2 InThinking Network webinar series. And have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And there they go. Stop recording.